Hello and welcome back to the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. I am your host, Michael Stamatinos, and if you're new to us, welcome. Delighted to have you here. We're having some incredible conversations with real fantastic leaders that are painstakingly reshaping the future of healthcare. We're really passionate about a few different areas. We're passionate about leadership, about access, about innovation, and the adoption of those innovations. And if it's your first time tuning in, let me just sort of take a very quick step back and tell you what we're really trying to accomplish here. So, we're focused on bringing real stories of innovation to life, not just stuff that you read in books, but like theory, like actual real people that are getting stuff done, that want to share some of the learnings and share some of the little wins with our community and ultimately with the world. If you hadn't had an opportunity to check out any of the historical interviews, wherever you are, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, please hit the subscribe button now so that any of the new interviews come directly to you. So today's guest is, to me, I believe it's something that most of healthcare says out loud, but rarely acts on. So the people who serve on the front lines matter just as much as the outcomes that they're asked to deliver. So Brian Ferguson is the CEO of Arena Labs. He spent over 20 years inside high-performing teams where the stakes were of the highest realness, and the cost of burnout is measured in lives. National security, special operations, elite athletics. Brian is a former Navy SEAL officer and a graduate of the London School of Economics. But what I think really defines him is how he understands service. So Brian talks about something called the service archetype, and there's actually a small group of people in any society that rarely ever say, "I'll go first." He's one of them. We've got first responders, soldiers, healthcare professionals. So in healthcare, that calling is relentless. There is no off season. There's no break in the schedule. There's no margin when things go wrong. Doctors, nurses, care teams, they give and they give and they give because that's who they are. And too often, the system takes everything that they have. And Arena Labs exists to change that. So Brian and his team are bringing science and performance models that have worked in elite military units and world-class sports into healthcare. Not necessarily to, push clinicians harder, rather to, help them last, to help them flourish, to give them tools to manage stress, pressure, recovery in a profession that honestly just never slows down. So they call that the era of predictive performance. And the idea is super simple, obviously really hard to execute. But if we expect world-class care for patients, we need to have world-class standards for how caregivers are taught to take care of themselves. So this conversation is going to be about service. It's going to be about standards. It's going to be about pressure, and honestly, what it really means to build a healthcare system that don't just survive on the backs of their people, but actually protect them. So, Brian, it's great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Michael, that is an impressive regurgitation of our mission work. Truly, I mean, that is really impressive. Given that we've spent, I guess, two sessions together, that means
Yeah.
a lot that you were listening that intently, and able to turn that around. Because I will tell you, people in our own ecosystem probably couldn't do that have been doing this. So that's awesome, man.
Well,
Thank you.
it feels good to hear that, and it's nice. Folks have told me that, look, if you're gonna do good work, do it right, do it well, and do it with the best of your ability. So, yeah, let's kind of dive in before, maybe we talk about Arena Labs and performance. I kind of want to start here, where I guess maybe when someone meets you for the first time,
Yeah.
what do you hope that they feel more than what they know about you?
Yeah, authenticity, man. Authenticity, 100%. I have my values in the world: be humble, be authentic, and then communicate. And Yeah, authenticity is a big one, which is interesting because that could be a buzzword, but it's um someone who's authentic like that. If you think about that, who comes to mind in your life, that's somebody who is showing up even as life's changes as they go through seasons of life, that is still
Right.
rooted in who they really are. And they're not putting on a show. That's so, and it's just, I think that's harder to do than to say. So anyways, feeling authentic and humble.
Mm. All right. So, is there a difference between being authentic and being candid?
um yeah, because I think candor can be performative. Like candor can be like, you can be the guy I'm just going to tell it like it is, and that's not always
Right. Right.
authentic. It's like
Right.
sometimes candor without the right humility
Mm.
is arrogance.
Mm. Yeah. Because, when I think about it, you've spent years inside of some of the most elite performing teams on the planet. Standards are really, really high. I would imagine that excuses are they just don't survive very long in those types of environments. Curious, what did like those environments teach you about human limits
Hmm.
um, that most people on the outside don't see?
Yeah, two things that come to mind is I'm sort of there's two sides of that coin. I think like a lot of times when we talk about high performing teams and cultures, whether it's the military, elite sport, medicine, we think they're perfect, and they rarely are. But what is true is there is a standard, and that standard is held to accountability, and so accountability is paramount. Um, I think two parts of your question. One is that I just had this conversation yesterday. I was talking to a good friend who
Hmm.
was previously the head of performance for the LA Lakers. And here's a guy who worked with LeBron James and, the Lake Show, as I call it. And we got a long discussion about pro athletes. And what has
Hmm.
surprised me, to be clear, I've obviously never been a professional athlete. I love performance. I love the human side. And elite
Hmm.
sport is a really interesting way to see like the peak of that. What
Yeah.
is surprising when you're behind the curtain of that is you would think that in pro sport there is like no margin for error. There's no people are held accountable. That's not always true. There are actually bad teams in pro sport, because
Mm.
there's not accountability, and there can be candor, but like candor without accountability doesn't do you any good. So
Mm.
I think it's like we could deconstruct like I'm really I love this idea of like what are the first principles of a high performing team? What's true of any team? Your family to the Navy SEALs to the LA Lakers. So that's one conversation, and standards and accountability is a part of it. Um, and I'm always, to be clear, I'm not perfect. I'm always myself trying to figure that out. The
Mm.
other side is like, what is it about the limits of a human? And if we have all those things in place or pursuing all those things, what's possible? Um, and that to me, I'd say, like I had the privilege, as you mentioned in my introduction, to serve in the military and special operations. It is in many
Yeah.
ways the greatest set of learnings in my life, outside of those that come with family and children. But the single most powerful thing in that is that I can't put a number to it, but most of us go through life without even coming close to touching the limits of what we're capable of. And the beauty of going through special operations training is you will be
Hmm.
forced into seeing what is at the bottom of your own well. And that is
Mm.
a gift for a human. And that usually involves a decision to die for something. And that sounds extreme,
Yeah.
um, but it doesn't have to be literal death. It's when you look at people who do extraordinary things and go through some element of touching a higher version of themselves,
Hmm.
they came to a place where they usually were like they were willing to die. That could be
Yeah.
the woman protesting the mullahs in Iran. That
Hmm.
could be someone building a business in the middle of the night that puts all their chips in the middle of the table because they believe in what they're doing. But that
Right.
decision to let go of the thing that keeps you afloat to go further,
Hmm.
as soon as you disconnect from that tether, it's the scariest thing in the world, and it's at the same time the most empowering and amplifying of the human spirit.
Yeah. So you mentioned standards accountability and how you described that to me just now. Like the word that came to my mind was toughness. Toughness, obviously, there are things that are in someone's highlight reel, things that hold up over time. Toughness sort of stands out to me. How do you define toughness today?
Yeah. Grit, my favorite. Our company is called Arena Labs. The namesake of that company comes from the Teddy Roosevelt quote. If you're not familiar, Teddy Roosevelt, former president of the United States, finishes his presidency in 1910. Teddy Roosevelt, by the way, if you're interested in just for the heck of it, look, I mean, if you're not familiar with his life, I would argue he is one of the most prolific American lives in modern history. He is extraordinary. Very tough upbringing, sickly as a child, healed himself through toughness and grit. Wrote books on ornithology and birds, and at the same time, naval strategy, was a governor of New York in his 30s, becomes president of the United States, first president to host a black man at the White House, active in women's suffrage, like just an amazing human being, finishes the presidency. By the way, like attempted assassination, doesn't die because he's got a speech in his pocket. The paper's so thick, the bullet doesn't penetrate his skin. Still stands up and gives the speech. After his presidency, goes and decides to map the Nile River in the Amazon, is carried out on a stretcher, like just a savage.
Total savage.
And just an epic life and tough as hell. And the thing about Teddy that is interesting is he gives a speech in 1910 in France. And the title of the speech is Citizenship in a Republic. There is one paragraph in that speech in which it is known as the man in the arena quote. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but he says, "It is not the critic who counts, but the man or woman in the arena." So not the person on the sidelines of life, but the person in the arena, marred by dust and sweat and blood, who knows the great victories of success and the great failures of defeat. And he's saying, like, look, in life, you can be on the sidelines or you can do the hard thing. And I think society has always been built on people willing to do the hard thing. There are very two clear camps in life. Yeah. There's people doing hard things, and there's people benefiting from people doing hard things. And so to me, like, we get caught in a narrative that in the modern world, people are soft. It is easier today to choose a comfortable life, no doubt. But there are still a lot of people doing really hard things, advancing society. And that is like, I think that is why grit, and it's frankly why there's an entire industry built around people who want to be gritty. They want to go on the weekend and like sign up to do something. But that's a daily choice of like, am I going to give up being comfortable to feel like I'm advancing society in a meaningful way? That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the man in the arena shortly because
Awesome.
I want to keep people hanging on because this is going to be such a fun conversation.
You're an immigrant, man. I shouldn't say your parents are, right?
My parents,
First conversation, like that's in that, by the way, in that speech, The Citizen Republic, Roosevelt talks a lot about immigrants and that fabric in a society. And it is like, that is one of the things I love. I talk about this from Cleveland, Ohio, a lot of immigrant culture there, second, third generation, but there's a grittiness in people who show up with nothing and got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is
just
like,
have no
remains the bedrock of America.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've used the term, the service archetype. That like, to me, that doesn't feel like branding or marketing. I mean, it just feels very personal.
Yeah, totally.
Where did that language come from?
Yeah,
When you talk about your roots.
It's funny. This is not staged, but since you're saying it, it's feeling staged. But behind me I'm in my home office, my library, and I call this the service library. And the reason is all these photos behind me are people in my family who served. And it's important. I have a daughter who's 6, and I don't want to make it. It's one of those things I want it to just be passively part of the fabric of our home, which is people served. They chose to do something for others to advance their society and community. And that's just an important part of our narrative. Whether she chooses that or not, I want her to, over time, I realized that was just a really prevalent part of my life that the people I admired and wanted to be like, they were all serving something or had served. My grandparents, my uncles, my mom, and my mom was a nurse. And I think about the people, the real, it's such an overused term, but the people we should celebrate, the heroes, are usually people you don't hear about. The person that's waking up in the middle of the night because they get a phone call or a pager or a phone goes off and they got to go
Yeah.
save someone they don't know. Like, that's easy to talk about, but we just don't appreciate how brutal that is. On
Yeah.
Veterans Day, a friend of mine wrote this beautiful post, and he said, someone's going to thank you for your service, or you're going to thank someone for their service. But know that right now there's an 18-year-old carrying a rifle in a country you've never heard of in the middle of the night, willing to die for you. The best thing you can do is to live a full life to honor that service. And that's like, to me, that is just, it fires me up thinking about that. Like, there's no other country
Yeah.
in the world where that's true. And so the service archetype is the person who raises his or her hand, whether to steward their fellow citizens, either to teach, to be a
Hmm.
first responder, a police officer, nurse, doctor, military. For American society to flourish, it's always been true that a small number of people choose that path.
Hmm.
Usually they're never fully celebrated or appreciated, but that doesn't matter to them. And so that to me is like, it's the thing that fires me up. And it's the thing I'm most humbled to be a part of. And if I can continue to figure out ways to live a life where my life's work is around those people and serving them, that feels fulfilling to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when you serve, it like this is not a job. Like it's just something that you do. It's who
Mm-hmm.
you are. And I see that happen with a number of clinicians that I'm, personal friends with. I mean, it's not a
Yeah.
job, man. It's like it's a calling. They're
Yep. And,
welded
and
to
that,
that
Michael's an
service.
important distinction. And I talk about this a lot. The basis of the service archetype
Yeah.
is the inspired soul. The person who's like, man, that thing, I can't look away from it. I need to do that thing. I need to go serve. I want to be someone wearing the nation's cloth, protecting overseas. I want to be the guy that gets the phone call after a car accident at 2 a.m. to go save a life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because that inspired soul, that concept is so powerful, the service archetype has a capacity to go beyond their body's capacity physically into a state of
Yeah.
depletion against the better angels of their nature because they believe in something bigger. It's not about them, it's about society, it's about their
Right.
community. And that's why we see higher rates of burnout, PTSD, stress. And it's why I think our work at Arena is so paramount because those
Mm.
people will deplete themselves over time until there's nothing left.
Yeah. When did you start spending time inside of hospitals and health systems? Like talk about the kind of the origin of that.
Overtly, I was actually still on active duty in the military. My last job in the military, I'd been introduced to a heart surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic. That was sort of out of novelty, frankly, to like, I
Mm.
wanted to learn. I wanted to see how other high performing teams thought about the intersection of technology and performance. The irony is that healthcare doesn't. I just assumed they did. I went to the Cleveland Clinic, #1 institution in the world for 30 years in heart surgery. To be clear, like incredibly capable team and people and technology, but no overt thinking on performance in terms of
Mm.
training people for recovery and sleep. But at that time, I watched two what are called coronary artery bypass grafts, CABGs, two heart
Hmm.
surgeries. And that blew my mind. It was an amazing opportunity. My mom had been a
Yeah.
nurse, so it was like life coming full circle.
Yeah.
And then I spent the next, 5 years. I mean, I've watched at this point, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of surgeries, maybe thousands. I don't know. I would say like that gave me kind of a master's degree in healthcare, just tons of
Mm.
hours in ORs and EDs and ICUs. And it's important if you're going to build any solution, you need to understand the problem from the inside. And so that,
Yeah.
I didn't know how important that would be at the time, but spent a lot of time around doctors and nurses.
So coming from the military world and kind of going in, diving into the healthcare world, um, were there some things that felt like very familiar? It
Oh yeah.
sounds like to me what surprised you most was the lack of, like you said, the performance side, like sleep and recovery. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, was there anything that felt like
I
really
mean, it is
familiar? Like, yeah,
wildly
this is
similar, Michael. It's the reason I
okay.
love the work. The landscapes could not be more similar. You know, to an outsider might go, really? The military and healthcare? But like the service archetype's prolific. These are all people who are not in it for the money. I mean, even the people who make a lot of money in healthcare, maybe you're world class surgeon, like they didn't come in thinking I'm going to make a ton of money. Like they had to earn that.
Yeah.
So it's not about money. It's about service. It's about doing hard things. I mean, talk about grit. Most hospitals, especially if you're talking about high acuity, like trauma, ED, ICU, OR, like
Yeah.
these are gritty people that don't mind waking up in the middle of the night or working an early shift. It's the same as the military. Highly diverse, by the way. Like today there's so much just tension in society around
Yeah.
diversity, but like these institutions, diversity is just part of the currency. No one really thinks about it.
Mhm.
And then it's ultimately like it's just a place where people feel impact viscerally every day. Like
Mhm.
when you're in the military, when you're in healthcare, it's very clear. Like we have a sort of this deficit of purpose and meaning in the modern world. Like those places, that's not the case. Like when you're on a
Yeah.
medical team, if anything, you have too much of it and it's exhausting you.
Yeah.
And so the work is to give people the tools so that they can feel that inspired soul and feel restored and feel that purpose and not be drowned in it.
Yeah. Because I mean, look, like healthcare, there is no off season. It's just unrelenting. And
Yep.
anybody that's built to serve, like we mentioned earlier, like it's part of their core fabric of who they are. It's their identity. They're just going to go until literally till nothing. What
100%.
what is just the unseen toll of that, like of that reality, and especially it happening at the scale that it's happening at?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, how do I answer that without, I don't want to, what I don't want to do is lean into the pandering narrative that everyone's broken in healthcare. I think that's its own problem. I think healthcare leaders
Yeah.
especially want to tell you there's a certain subset of people in healthcare who are excited to tell you how hard and bad it is. And I think that's where healthcare gets in its own way. And part of that is that I would say one of the differences in the military versus healthcare. In the military, when you sign up, you're very aware of the sacrifice and the toll, and especially maybe because in the last 20 years we've generally been in combat, or we've been at war, so people know that, and they know there's challenges with it.
Yeah.
In healthcare, at some point, like it's all about brokenness, and in fairness, the military got to that point. And I would say when I left the military 2017, there was this building narrative around PTSD and the brokenness that wars had caused.
Hmm.
But what I learned and saw was that for as much as we were investing in resources to prevent PTSD, no one wants to be told they're broken. If I say to you, Michael, you are
Yeah.
broken or you will be, it's human nature to move away from that narrative.
Yeah.
And so when we talk through the aspirational lens of performance and flourishing, we're drawn to it, even though the things that make us flourish are the same things that prevent us from being burned out or broken. I think healthcare has not quite figured that out and continues to double down on burnout, brokenness, how hard things are, and the hidden narrative. And it is real, to be clear. Like, just like I saw my mom struggle and suffer because she loved what she did and she was juggling raising a family and two kids, like, that's
Hmm.
very real for a lot of people in the front lines of medicine. And there's bad leaders and there's institutions that aren't making the right investments. But these are also people who like want to do hard things. And so I think giving them the tools to feel like they have a sense of agency, to not have to just be part of the broken narrative, I think that's really important. And for most of the people we work with, that is a preferred path rather than um, the things that feel like again they're sort of pandering.
Yeah. I mean, any high capacity leader that I know, that I speak to, that is doing hard things, when people ask them how they're doing, the default mechanism is everything's fine. Everything's
Yeah.
great. Just
Yeah.
keep pushing forward. Obviously, when you get behind private doors and there's a relationship and they can really share what's going on, but the most of them are not. They don't want to admit. They don't want to say like, "Yeah, I'm burnt out."
Yeah.
If anything, they want to just keep serving, keep doing more. I'm kind of wondering because when I think about Arena Labs and the mission and the manifesto, which is sick, by the way, it's amazing. If anyone hasn't read it, it's phenomenal. Um, you don't build something like that unless something very real happens, like in your life.
Yeah.
Was there, I guess, a moment when when this work kind of stopped just being disinteresting to you and started being very necessary?
I mean, I think it's just been, um, it's definitely been the arc of my own life. Yeah, I mean, I think again, I was raised in a household where I watched my mom give herself to something she believed in, but I also saw the toll that took.
Mm,
My mom passed away relatively young, and I would. It's hard. You never know. What she had leukemia. You never know what causes those things. But
yeah.
I would say that like an undue toll of stress and imbalance in her life contributed to some component of that. Um, and just classically being someone who didn't take care of herself. Now that wouldn't have just been solved through something like we've done, but I do think these things contribute. Teaching people the intelligent ways to um, take a knee when necessary. And then in
Hmm.
the military, I saw the same play out. I also in the military was able to see how small tools and solutions have an asymmetric return on value. Meaning, if you teach someone early how to sleep properly
Right.
and what it means to sleep well, and you do that on the front end of a career, you compound that over 2 decades, you're literally changing the
Yeah.
course of someone's life. Teach someone how to use the breath to deactivate the nervous system when they're stressed. Sounds silly, like, oh, for real, we're talking breathing techniques. No, like if you learn that skill now and you play that out over 20 years, like you're talking about a fundamentally different nervous system.
Can
So
can
that
can
I
we
learned and
can you
saw
share an
that.
example of that breathing technique like now, like right
Yeah, I
now?
mean,
Is it
I
possible
think
even to do
like
that?
there's one of the things we teach on our platform is just the physiological side. This has been popularized by Dr. Andrew Huberman. He teaches it.
Yeah.
It's 2 inhales through the nose and a long exhale through the mouth. And you do that, like you think about doing that through behind a mask in the OR, with scrubs
Yeah.
on, and that's like there's so many different breath routines. There's people who will sit and, just breathe, box breathe, like inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4.
Right. Right.
Something where we are what is more, or I should say, what is as important as the act of breathing is the mechanism of stepping back because you realize that your nervous system is in sympathetic state. And one of the things in sympathetic state means you're in fight or flight. And in our nervous
Hmm.
system, we're in one or the other. We're in fight or flight or rest and digest. Parasympathetic, sympathetic. Some of this language is getting more popularized today.
Right.
But at a basic level, we think about like most people in society feel more stressed today than they did 5 years ago, let alone 10. And
Right.
so the superpower in today's world is like, how do you downregulate? How do you get that nervous system from being in sympathetic, alert, sort of on edge to being relaxed? Well, that order of magnitude is substantially higher in healthcare because you are literally taught and wired to save lives, which means you have to be in sympathetic state. So what happens is you maladapt to being comfortable in
Mm.
sympathetic state. Same with operators in the military. And so what
Hmm.
we know is if we give people these basic tools, it has this really huge return on investment over time
Right.
if they put them into play. And so for me, like to your earlier question, like when did that become clear? I just think I saw two very different outcomes over my life in people who learned to self-regulate and those
Hmm.
that did not in these high stress environments. Because if you don't, um, it plays out. I mean, the discussion I had yesterday, sport is less consequential. I mean, there's just in a real terms, while
Yeah.
I love pro
Yeah.
sport, the stakes are not the same. However, pro sport is a really interesting analog because there's so much money in sport, people spend on what they know gets return. And so you can look at pro sport and you can say the discussion I had yesterday with my friend Ed from the Lakers is take LeBron James. We know what works, and LeBron has proven it through
Yeah.
consistency, through discipline, and through the basics. The NBA is a league that's about talent, meaning like everyone comes in, it's pure talent, and you can survive on talent for maybe 5, 7 years. And
Yeah.
then if you want to keep going, it's about routine, discipline, and doing the basics well. And it is wild to see the divergence between people who come in on pure talent and those who take pure
Hmm.
talent and combine it with the basics. So if we take that concept and we say, okay, if I want to be a world-class doctor or nurse, like I can survive on not caring and just saying this is about the patient. I don't need to sleep. I
Yeah.
can eat whatever I
Yeah.
want. That works maybe at a medical school and residency for a little while, but I can tell you in our data in health in arena, and what we see in healthcare is like there's a cliff that comes pretty quickly. Like people just you can start to see their nervous system activity. Again, they're maladapted. They've got really low HRVs. Their heart rate's elevated. Their sleep architecture's jacked up. And so when you show those people that data, they turn around and go, hey, you know what? Like, I actually didn't know how much I needed this, but what are the tools I can do to reset this arc? Because the current arc I'm on doesn't end well.
Yeah, I mean, because if you think about healthcare, just in general, just the strongest leaders, they're usually the one that everyone kind of leans on. But to me, they're also the last ones that like anybody actually ever checks on. Like, that's to me, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, and that is to be clear to the front end of this conversation. There's an accountability mechanism missing, and that I would argue is most healthcare leaders. And I'll gladly take flack for that. I do not see a lot of healthcare leaders who see themselves as leaders responsible for stewarding a human system. And that is the difference in the military. If you take the average military leader, they know very clearly I'm responsible for the next generation. I'm taking care of my troops. You go into the average hospital and you grab a healthcare leader, they are thinking about patient throughput. They're thinking about turnover time. They're thinking about marginal value of ICUs. But no one's really going, how are my people doing? And that is not because they don't care. It's because healthcare does not teach people early on to lead and what it means to lead at scale when it matters.
So when people hear performance, maybe they think pressure.
Yep.
I think you mean something different. I mean, so how do you explain predictive performance to someone who's
a lot of buzzwords there, right?
Who's already exhausted?
Totally. It's a great question, Michael. And I say this all the time. Performance is not about doing more. It usually is doing less. If I want to perform at my best in X, fill in the blank, as a father, as a community member, as a doctor, as a nurse, in order to do that, I have to have the capacity for presence. Presence only comes by virtue of having the attention and the emotional tank to be present. When I am underslept, when I am maladapted to sympathetic state, my HRV is 10 and my heart rate's 50% higher than it was 10 years ago, I'm not in a state where I can be present in the way that I want to. So performing at my best means learning the tools to restore, recover, refill my tank. That usually has nothing to do with the hospital or work. It has everything to do with how do you spend your time outside the hospital? How are you intentional with the way you rest and recover, even if you do work call on a weekend? How do you think about your Sunday off to restore yourself, not just by being, sort of sedentary or overprescribed with your family, but making time to do something that refills your tank? And again, those things can feel trite, but when they play out well, that performance, it usually means down-regulating, taking something off the table, being quiet, still in nature. And so we always say, like, performance for us is subtractive. It's not additive.
So what do you say to and I'm just thinking of, the hospital executive or maybe some leader that might say, you know what, this all sounds great, but you know what, we're barely surviving financially, which is true for many health systems today. They're really, it's hard. What if they say, Brian, we can't afford to focus on caregiver well-being right now? Like what is the mistake in that thinking?
Yeah, I think it's probably, this is to maybe be provocative and maybe incendiary, but like, I actually think it's probably the most illogical set of thoughts in American society. When you look at the economic impact of medical error, of healthcare costs, of turnover, all these things that are like such big numbers, we can't even conceptually make them concrete. It's like $100 billion, just crazy numbers. That aside, if you go into the average institution in healthcare and you go on any website right now, you pull up any American health system, I guarantee it says some version of like, we provide world-class patient care. We love our patients matter. Totally get it. That's great. Everybody goes into healthcare for the patient, bar none. No one goes into, maybe people are interested in like the human heart, but they want to do it. They choose humans because they want to steward human health. Otherwise they'd be vets or they'd do something else. So the breakdown is to say the most important thing we're doing is taking care of this externality of the patient. But the way we're going to do that is at all costs to the person providing care.
Yeah.
Meaning, I'm going to do whatever necessary for this patient, and that's probably going to cost me the doctors and nurses taking care of the patient, and that is acceptable. And it's not acceptable because we want that to happen. It's just we haven't actually thought about the reverse logic, which says if I want to provide world-class quality and care, that means the person providing care has to be at their best definitionally. If they're not, I am actually providing reduced quality and care, period. And I don't like, I'm always amazed that feels like a novel concept, and people make a lot of excuses around it. Oh, you don't understand. No, I've been in hospitals. I understand. There's just no moment in the day, or there's not very little messaging. The messaging is always like, hey, we're going to give you a pizza party. We appreciate your work. Yeah. The doctor's wellness committee wants dry cleaning, but no one's like, hey, how are we really thinking about measuring and impacting well-being in a way that demonstrably moves the needle? That's 100% a leadership issue. And most people who make the financial argument, I think it's a cop-out. Like, I really do. Every organization has trade-offs. The question is, what are you investing in it that is more important than your doctors and nurses?
So for those that are committed to improving and creating elite performance for doctors and nurses, give me like the fundamentals, like how does it work with Arena Labs, and are there any cool stories that you can share as a result of that work?
Yeah. So number one, I appreciate asking that question and setting me up to talk about our work. But let me be clear, there's ways to do it without our company. We do this. We do work with health systems that are investing in their people. As an example, we're working right now with HCA. A lot of people get angry. HCA is for profit. What HCA does very well is they deliberately invest in people to be leaders, and they deliberately invest in people to be managers, and they think about that at different levels in an organization. And I find that inspiring because I think it's a huge missing piece of American healthcare. Everybody's busy and focused on the patient, on the thing in front of them.
Yeah.
And leaders need to be thinking about the people around them. So that aside, at Arena, like we work with Epic, there are a lot of leaders who are hungry to figure this out and say, look, to your question, we want to make an investment here. We know that our people matter, and we just don't have a precedent. We don't have a solution. Yeah. And so when we come in, number one, our goal is to put a performance coach in the pocket of every doctor and nurse in America. We believe every doctor and nurse, just like LeBron James, just like Tom Brady, just like a Navy SEAL, should have the tools they need to manage their stress and pressure day to day and over the long arc of a career, to improve rest and recovery, even when it's tough, even after call, and to balance energy. And so to do that, we provide them with a platform that gives them a human coach that they can access 24/7. It gives them a wearable sensor, so we get a biometric reading of their lifestyle signature, and it gives them the curriculum and the tools to learn based on what they need. When we do that individually, if we do it across a service line in a health system, so Advocate Health, we just worked with their emergency department across the organization. So about 400 people. We get a lifestyle signature individually across 400 people. We aggregate that. And then the leadership there is saying, oh, wow. Like, as an example, last year during the Hurricane Helene, you can see very clearly the signature that a crisis event has on the physiology of a human system in the Carolinas versus Chicago in the case of Advocate Health System.
What are they getting to measure that? Like, you giving them just like a simple device that they need to wear?
We do qualitative and quantitative. So the qualitative side is we have essentially a daily check-in. How are you doing? Yeah. Really basic. And we give people a chance to throw notes in there. So it's just like, today was, rough morning case, got behind the curve and never recovered. Or epic day, just had a really good connection with my team, whatever it is. And so our data and analytics team on the back end can just do a very simple sentiment analysis on all that language and say, like, what are the words that are popping up, what's happening? And this idea of sentiment or human emotion in aggregate language is actually quite powerful, because you can imagine people in North Carolina during a hurricane, like the stuff they're saying in the emergency department is just heavy versus, a place that's in sort of steady state operations. But we also measure it quantitatively through a wearable sensor. So we measure physiology, and we're looking at people's general sleeping patterns, and we're looking at their nervous system. Back to the earlier part of this conversation, the nervous system is generally best measured today through what's called heart rate variability. So the variance between heartbeats is a signal of your nervous system either being in that sympathetic fight or flight or parasympathetic rest and digest. And so we look at that over time and say, okay, is this person, are we seeing them kind of move through a healthy cycle of stress and recovery? Are they stuck in that sympathetic fight or flight, or are they just really relaxed? You can imagine, again, in a hurricane, in the aggregate, that human system, you see that stress go up, and the residual or the tail on that is actually that to me is the most, to your point, on really compelling stories. I think what happens in any organization, but especially in healthcare, where you have a high operational tempo, you have a crisis event. So you have you're in trauma and you have just a heavy weekend, and then you go home and sleep, and then Monday you're kind of back to normal. You think you are, but your nervous system still experiences residual, and that residual, depending on the intensity or the acuity of that crisis event, it can be days, if not weeks. And we see that in the human signature. Again, like, that's not to say everyone should go home and rest and be off. The question for leaders is, okay, what are the tools we give people to accelerate the recovery and or diminish the impacts of that residual crisis event?
So you have this, you have data, you have the insights. What are the actions that you hope that leaders take? So they see this information, they see this event, and sometimes, maybe it's not a catastrophic natural disaster. Maybe it's something else. What do you hope are the actions that these leaders are taking, for their team? Are there any examples that you can kind of provide?
Work we do right now, Michael. It's where we have the most improvement. I will tell you, our thesis has always been, first, we've got to create an individual toolkit, an individual set of actions that create a data set that shows demonstrable movement. So we need to show, like, hey, over 8 weeks, we can move someone's psychophysiology, their sense of self, and their overall well-being through sleep and stress. And we've done IRBs now, independent review boards, that look at that and show that we can demonstrably do that through our platform. Very proud. We're about to publish in JAMA next month.
Nice.
But at the same time, the individual story, while profound and powerful, is only profound and powerful if we can tell it as an aggregate story that a leader can then look at, make sense of, and take action on. So where we're at now, the bigger institutions we work with, again, Advocate HCA, what I admire about them is they are doing the work of saying, okay, how do we operationalize this? So healthcare is very good at operationalizing data. Again, patient throughput, turnover time, first case on time starts. How do we operationalize the physiology and well-being of our team? Because pro sports does this. We know that if someone has too much load on their system in the NBA, meaning they played more minutes than expected, and they were in deceleration at more than they should have been, it is highly likely they're going to rest more the next game. Now, healthcare, these gritty environments, just like the military, you can't just say, hey, take the day off. But what we can do is we can think about operational structure. We can think about, okay, at a basic level, if there's a crisis event, this sounds trite, but this is better than nothing. How do we think about our stand-up when we've got our huddles in the morning? Our nurse managers talking to nurses about basic recovery principles. This is what the military does really well. Just to hit the basics, hammer the trite and basic stuff regularly, and remind people about sleep hygiene. Remind people about sleep consistency. But take the aggregate data set and then integrate that into just the subtle operations of the day. That's how you culturally move the needle around performance, rather than just kind of throwing stuff at the wall.
Yeah, look, people need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. And sometimes, like you said, we miss the basics. So if you're looking out years from now, and if Arena Labs is doing exactly what you hope it does, what's going to be different about this healthcare workforce?
I think number one, at the individual, the frontline level, at the lowest common denominator, I don't say that pejoratively, but the lowest entry person, right out of scrub tech school, right out of residency, those people are equipped with some toolkit that allows them to be self-aware. on the risks of stress and unaddressed, and more importantly, the tools to give them a sense of agency of what to do in increasingly consequential environments. As they move from scrub tech to nurse manager and up, they know what's required. And that toolkit's been provided by Arena. At the same time, in the C-suite of that hospital they work in, when you go to that morning operations meeting and people talk about the amount of beds that are full and the prior number of patients that came through and throughput,
Right.
aggregate data sets on well-being around sleep, around readiness of the workforce is considered a core operational metric. Because we have proven those operational metrics, when in the green, are reducing medical error. They are reducing all of the things that cost the hospital heavily, from turnover to error.
Yeah. So when you think about, like, red, yellow, green, or,
Yeah.
people that are in the red, those are the ones that are at risk of, maybe they're over revving their engines. And
Yep.
those are the insights and exactly the actions that they need to take based on the aggregate data that you're showcasing.
Yeah,
To
and the thing about that, Michael, is those people in the red take another analog industry of aviation. We learned the hard way that people in the red are dangerous. There's a
Yes.
reason that when you take a flight from Chicago to Nashville, the FAA regulates crew rest time for that pilot and flight attendant. Our hope is not, I have no interest in being part of the regulatory state and mandating things. My hope is that we can convince healthcare institutions, if you want to be world class in patient quality and safety and care, the way to do that is by keeping your pilots in the green. In this case, your surgeons in the green, which means making basic investments that allow people to feel the sense of agency to recover intelligently. And that is a two-way economy, to be clear. I'm not putting all of the onus on the surgeon. Because a surgeon that knows how to rest and recover, that's still being pulled in because the hospital's down to surgeons who left because there are too many operations, that's a problem the institution needs to solve. We believe creating the data is profound, but data is simply a compass. The map of how to use that data needs to be at the institutional level, and that's our work at Arena, to train leaders how to be proficient in the data of the human system and use it to improve operations, reduce turnover, medical error, et cetera.
So maybe we've got a clinician that's listening to this, a senior leader that's listening to this, and they're showing up every day,
Yep.
exhausted but committed.
Yep.
What do you most want them to hear?
I hope something that I said either made you angry or inspired. If you are inspired and you're already doing this, I would love to get to work with you and understand how you're doing it. If you were angry, I would ask, why are you angry? Are you angry because it's not true that you don't think this is a leadership challenge if you're a leader? And ask yourself, are you really leading your people and providing solutions that are novel and not just what's been done? Now, if you're on the front lines, I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed, to not feel like you have the resources. And I would love in any way to convince your leadership that we can help solve that problem with you, not for you, with you. But it does require the leaders you work for to believe they've got to do things differently. Because the thing we see again and again, to your point, Michael, you brought this up, you spend your life around healthcare leaders. So the fact that you're saying we don't have the money means you've been told hundreds of times by healthcare leaders, we don't have the money for this.
Yeah.
And I'm just at a point where I don't actually believe that. I know that healthcare is a resource-constrained environment. I run a business. It's a resource-constrained environment. Resource constraint is a good thing because it forces you to make hard trade-offs. I think for too long, healthcare has made the wrong trade-offs, and that's why it's in a deficit right now with this human system.
So we're gonna kind of wrap where we kind of put a little pin before. And when we were together in Nashville, Brian, you handed me something that I didn't expect, and honestly, I carry it with me in my bag everywhere I go. You gave me this badass military coin, which
that's awesome to see.
Which has the quote of Teddy Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena." Maybe just sort of share with the audience like the significance of receiving a military coin, and who are the men and women in
Yeah.
healthcare that are in the arena right now, and yeah, go from there.
Yeah, I appreciate you. That's a shout out to certainly a culture way bigger than me, a legacy way longer than anything I've seen. But in the military, as I explained to you, Michael, and you brought up earlier the similarities between military and healthcare cultures. And back to that gritty service where resources are not abundant and hard trade offs have to be made. You cannot in healthcare give people expensive gifts. Part of it is there's laws against it, just like the military. You
Hmm.
can't kind of
Hmm.
buy people off. And then more importantly, like most of the people working in those environments don't have a lot of money to buy expensive gifts. And so in the military, one of the most sacred resources that's exchanged are coins. Because a coin is not about the cost of the gift, it's about what it represents. And a coin is only given to an individual on behalf of a unit or a commander saying, hey, you went above and beyond. You represent the spirit of service, the spirit of being a teammate, the spirit of the mission, in a way that we want to honor. And so coins are not given out just kind of like as gifts or willy nilly. They're given out very deliberately at moments of consequence to honor an individual or a team for going above and beyond in a spirit of service.
Mm.
So from that prior life, we have a few veterans on our team, and that was one of the things we wanted to carry forward is how do we bring that same tradition to the people we respect and admire who are doing the front lines. There's a subtext in that coin that says for excellence on the front lines. This is for people who are advancing healthcare on the front lines. And then it carries the spirit of everything we believe in about service and doing hard things. And it's really fun because most people in healthcare have that reaction where they, just like I do. In fact, behind me up here, you can see I've got some of my coins. Like some of those are probably 15 years old and I still treasure them. I can go look at, I know exactly who gave it to me, what happened and where I was. And that's more profound than any, fancy dinner or bottle of wine.
Yeah, yeah, it really means a lot. Like honestly, when you gave it to me, I was like, the first thought that came to mind was like, I do not deserve this. And then you explained it, and it just felt a deep sense of, okay, I have this coin. I'm going to be the person in the arena day in and
That's
day out.
awesome.
Not because everybody's looking at me, but because like I'm supposed to be here doing the
Yeah.
work, not to receive, the reward, but just to do it in the work. So how can people follow Arena Labs, keep track, keep tabs of the work you and the team are doing?
Yeah. Thank you. Arenalabs.co. That's our website. Would love to hear from you. Again, any reaction today to the conversation, at Arena Labs on Instagram and then on LinkedIn. And those are kind of, I think, the three mediums where most people in healthcare live. If you're listening, you got, someone in your family, go, hey, you should check this out. Send them our way. And we are always hungry for just frontline leaders who want to look at the world a little different, but who are doing the hard work. And I know the way you live, Michael, you're attracting a lot of those listeners, and I appreciate you letting me share
Yeah.
our mission here today. Really, really
Yeah,
thank you.
man. Of course. It's my pleasure. Just thanks for the conversation. And honestly, what stayed with me today is it's not just about it's not just talking about the standards. It's not about just having these things that are on a wall or values that are on a wall, but it's like the kind that you really live by, the kind that you use that protect people when nobody's watching. And when I'm thinking about Arena Labs now, it's like this isn't just like a company. Like you all are like this is a living, breathing promise,
Yeah,
and it means something to you. And showing up for the people and serving those that serve others and having the heart to serve those that serve others. So if you're a clinician, if you're a leader and you're listening to this and you feel tired and you feel like shit, there's a lot going on here. Um, your work has meaning. Yeah, your health matters. So take action. If there's a toolkit or something, Brian, you and the team have come up with, we'll make sure we put that in the description, to support, these fearless leaders that are going out there and doing this type of work. And by the way, if there is a topic that you want us to explore, if you're still tuning in, if there's a leader you want us to make sure we connect with, I'd like to hear it. Drop me a note, leave a comment. Honestly, share this. that was probably the best thing that you can do is share it with people that you care about. This is a platform that's not just about content. I mean, this is really a community. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. So thank you for listening. Keep building with purpose, and we will see you next time on the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show.
Thank you.
You bet.